Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. The next comment or question comes from Kira Barsmith in response to the It's a Sad Day video I did in March 2022. And Kira writes, Peter Gabriel was at the last Genesis show. They should have brought him on stage. Cool, he showed up though. And yes, when I was there, I saw that he was in the audience. He wasn't sitting anywhere near me. But when I go back to the gig in October 2021, when I was at the Hydra in Glasgow, I took a few videos at that point of the band. But this last one, I just didn't take any videos or any pictures. I just sat and soaked up the atmosphere, because this is the last time that I will ever see Genesis play live. Having seen them play live several times in the past, but this is the last time I'd ever see them play live. I also thought it was right that Peter didn't get on stage and sing, because Peter's journey with the band ended many years before that, and it's the current formation, the three core members, or recording, what they call the Genesis recording band, which is obviously Mike, Phil, and Tony. They're the recording band, and then it's the stage band, which now is still Darren Sturmer. And they brought in Nick Collins for this, but it was Chester Thompson for years. But there was that was the kind of the group that actually took Genesis from English prog rock group to global supergroup. Kira then commented and said, "I agree. Definitely the best to stay in the moment at the concerts and not muck around with electronic gadgets. I thought it would be cool for fans to see them all on stage at a last gig and complete the circle, but not having Peter sing." Did Peter contribute a lot to their Genesis, pun intended? I'm pretty sure Phil never liked Genesis though. And this is actually untrue, because that's a really interesting comment you make. And there were people saying that there was some animosity between Phil and Peter, but the reality was that Phil played drums and percussion on a lot of Peter's solo work, and he wouldn't have done that if he didn't like Peter. And Peter did uncredited vocals on some of Phil's work, and they wouldn't have done that if they didn't like each other. There was never any tension. Once they got over Peter leaving the band, there was never any tension there, as far as I'm aware. I got the impression that the whole band were just kind of annoyed at the way Peter left the band mid-tour, or announced he was leaving the band mid-tour, and they had to persuade him to stay. Then there was Kira wrote back and said, I saw a video of Genesis while both were in the band, and Phil was sneering at Peter. The comments section was filled with others noticing. Glad to know that they work things out, though Peter was not invited to stage for any of the recent Genesis gigs. Does say something. I'm not sure it does say something. I just think the problem that Peter had was, and the band got annoyed with him, was he kept dressing up and would not let the rest of the band see what he was dressed up as before he turned up on stage. And that did cause tension within the band, is the fact all of a sudden Peter was dressed up as a fox with mask and tail and God knows what else. But I think that's all kind of, Peter does his thing and Genesis have done their thing, and the three of them done solo work, and Steve Hackett does his thing. So, from that perspective, I think they all get along. Next comment or question comes from Tortog, and it's in response to It's a Sad Day. And he writes, what is sad to me is because of Firehose music being aimed at people today, they have lost the appreciation of music. They don't invest themselves in the music. When I was growing up, people's record collections might only be 20 albums, but they took their time to select each album. They knew every song, they read the notes on the album cover, and each album they put had part of them in it. People would get together to listen to music and bring albums they wanted to share with friends and tell friends about the album and why they liked it. Music was a very important part of life. So buying a new record was a big decision because you usually only bought one at a time. Skip to today, and people drinking from a streaming fire hose of music. They don't invest in themselves, in the music. It's the tunes du jour that everyone else is listening to, so you do too. Very, very true. Your music choices say little about how you, artists, you like, don't speak for you. You've had a bad day, you think you don't need to listen to some fill in blank space to hear some words that will help me think through this. Today people choose music to be part of a social group and not to be themselves. That is sad. By the way, I worked in a music store on and off throughout the 60s and 70s. It was a great job listening to music all day and talking to people and making suggestions of things to listen to. Also selling albums to big name actors and musicians and learning a little from them, the music they would talk about and buy. Music and the arts are an important part of our lives, and why historians study the arts to an era to understand people that lived then. The sentiment basically you've described reminds me of what I used to do when I bought new music. Put the record on the platter, read the sleeve and any other booklets that would accompany the album. In latter years I would buy the CD, extract the booklet from the case, and the thicker the booklet, the harder it was, of course, to extract, trying to get a really thick booklet out of that little thin wedge that they used to put in CD cases. A lot of albums you couldn't actually shut the CD case because the booklet wouldn't let you. And I think listening to music to be part of a group, as you say, is indicative of a herd culture, which is kind of what I think we're in. I will be honest, I do not know which music is in the charts. I honestly don't know. I couldn't tell you what is number one. Well, I think it's Lad Baby, but normally I couldn't tell you what was number one. Not at all. I just do not listen to chart music at all. Before lockdown, I would actively seek out new music and attend gigs. If I liked the music, I could invest the time to find out more about the artists. I used to do this all the time before lockdown. You know, go to gigs. You know, either tribute bands or new bands or live music. I used to do that all the time. I haven't done it very much since lockdown was lifted because a lot of venues are still struggling to open. I remember a few good years ago went to see Wishbone Ash, but as the warm-up act, the more interesting act to me was the John Young keyboard player, who had his own band and others has recorded an interesting body of work. It really is. So I bought his albums and listened to them on CDs for years, and I really did enjoy listening to his albums. He did several really good albums. He was a keyboard player with the Scorpions for a while. I don't know whether he still is. But his albums were good, so it's a good recommendation if you want to sort of hear someone who's doing the longs. I can't think what the album name is, but his name is John Young. It's the John Young Band. Anyway, the 60s and 70s were, to be honest, the golden era for the album. That's what the youth of the 60s and 70s did. They went and bought albums, and that's how we ended up with people like the Beatles and the Stones.